Awesome, right on. Well, hello and happy Friday. Welcome to Success Principles, y'all. I'm excited to connect with some good people today. Right on. Well, can everybody hear me okay? Good, loud and clear. Awesome. Well, you guys might recall that we left off last week. We were talking about the imagination. We were talking about how the imagination is the most marvelous and miraculously powerful force that the world has ever known. And I had suggested that a visualization practice, okay, is a very powerful tool to help you bridge the gap between your imagination and reality. And that's true. The visualization is the bridge between your imagination and reality. And you know what? Sometimes when you set a goal, okay, that might be all that you have is the idea or the image in your mind. That might be all that you have is the thought or the vision of it. You might not necessarily know how it's going to happen, have a plan, have the knowledge, the understanding, or the awareness. You might just have the vision. And our job is to do everything that we can, everything in our power, just to hold that vision on the screen of our mind at all times, to see it, to speak it, to feel it, and believe it. And that's where visualization comes in, right? You know, it helps us to normalize that feeling, become familiar with that before the event actually takes place. You know, and that's really the key to manifestation is this belief. The truth is that the more that you normalize yourself to this idea or your goal, the more you tend to believe it. And the faster you can believe an idea, the more quickly you can move it into reality. So our job is just to hold that vision and that image on the screen of our mind at all times. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I shared with you guys an essay called Deafness of Purpose, right? And in that, there's a paragraph in there called The Power of Your Subconscious Mind, okay? And it says that any dominating idea, plan, or purpose that's held in your conscious mind through repeated effort and emotionalized by a burning desire for its realization is taken over by the subconscious mind and acted upon through whatever natural and biological means may be available. Okay. It says that the subconscious mind can be compared to a car, while the conscious mind can be compared to the driver. It says that the power is actually in the car, not in the driver. Okay. And that the driver must learn to release and direct that power. How does the driver learn to release and direct that power? By consciously choosing where to direct it, by consciously choosing on what to focus on, right? It says that the subconscious mind receives any image that is transferred to it by the conscious mind under strong emotion, and that the key begins with you having a clear, concise picture of what you seek. Okay. He goes on to say that when that picture grows to be an obsession with you, you'll find that every action leads to its acquisition. When that becomes a burning desire, when that becomes an obsession, you'll find that every action leads to its acquisition. To be honest with you guys, this essay, Deafness of Purpose, is a gold mine of wealth and information and wisdom. You could probably, we talk about the importance of study. You guys, you could probably study this essay for the rest of your life and you'd be good. I mean that. And I'm saying that because I'm willing to bet that there's not a single person on this call that completely understands or grasps the magnitude of what's being said here. Yep. Maybe Melissa does. But I'm telling you, you could study this day after day after day for the rest of your life, and you'd be good. But I bet you that there's some people in this group that probably didn't even read it one time. I wonder. Jamie says no, she's nodding her head. But here's the thing, we're talking about visualization and the imagination. Quantum physics has shown us that, what you think, you feel, and what you feel, you attract. And I think it was Jamie that just shared something in the group chat that was talking about the electromagnetism of our thoughts and our emotions, right? And whatever you send out there comes back multiplied. And you're going to think of it like we're giant magnets that continue to attract more of what we think and more of what we feel. Whatever we put out comes back multiplied. So we got to be asking ourselves, well, what are we focusing on? Where's our attention going? What images am I holding in my mind? Now, this is why I'm so adamant about doing things like our affirmations. And I suggest doing them 100 times a day, and people think I'm crazy, or our visualizations, or meditating, or studying. And sometimes I feel bad for all the things that I ask you guys to do, do your affirmations, do your visualizations, study every day, find time to be in nature, let your mind wander, allow the subconscious to go to work. It's a lot of things. But then I'm reminded that, hey, I have to do all that stuff too. But we do it because it works. We do it because it's powerful. And we do it because most other people won't. That's what separates us, So today, we're going to be talking about the single most important function of the mind. The single most important function of the mind. And that is, dun, 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 decision. Decision. This is the single most important function of the mind because nothing can happen until we make a decision. Nothing can happen until we make a decision. Now, what we need to understand is that our entire life is a reflection. A reflection of what? Well, our entire life is a reflection of the decisions that we've made, or in some cases, not made. Now, I really think that this is truly one of the most criminal things that the school system has done is deprived us the knowledge or the awareness of learning to make decisions. Did anybody here, just out of curiosity, take a class in all of their years of schooling called Decision Making 101? Anybody? No. I certainly didn't. The school system is designed to teach us how to read, write, regurgitate, remember things for a short period of time, perhaps, but decision making, the most important function of the mind, oh, forget about it. They could figure that out on their own. So where did you learn to make decisions? Chances are your parents probably never sat you down and talked about it either. You get the birds and the bees talk, but you ever get the decision-making talk? I didn't. So let me ask you, how do you think most people learn to make decisions?
By watching other people.
By watching other people? Sure. Observing.
Parents, teachers, any kind of person that you look up to, I guess.
Sure. Yeah, totally. Yeah. Thanks, Tamara. Anybody else? Anybody? How do you think most people learn to make decisions?
Trial and error.
Trial and error. Right. Figure it out as we go. Yeah. Here's a question for you, and this is a legit question. Okay. You might want to ask yourself, do I make decisions? And I'm not saying asking you this to be cheeky. Okay. This is a genuine question. Asking, do I make decisions? And the reason I think this is a very powerful question is because while we know, okay, that the subconscious mind is conditioned programming, right? It's conditioned by four things. It's conditioned socially, culturally, environmentally, and genetically. We also know that our subconscious mind controls 95 to 98% of what we think, what we say, and what we do. So if most of our actions and most of our behavior is controlled by our subconscious mind, and our subconscious mind is programmed socially and culturally, genetically and environmentally, do we really even make our own decisions? Or is most of that like we're operating like a computer program? Melissa?
It's kind of like the whole like sheep saying, where we're kind of like sheep and we just follow, and probably a lot of our decisions are unconsciously made because it's just what everybody else around us is doing. And then, we're a black sheep if we make our own decisions. We become the black sheep of the group, right? So,
100%.
yeah.
So you think that a lot of people are kind of out there, they're a sheep in the flock and they're just following along with what everybody else is doing? Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah, 100%. And, that's probably where a lot of that fear gets instilled in us to make our own decisions because it's going against the grain of what everybody around us is constantly doing.
Right.
And so it instills fear, and that what stops a lot of us from making a decision for ourselves and what's best for us and not necessarily what's best for everybody around us.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. You said that most people are kind of like sheep and they're following the herd. Well, Earl Nightingale, he shares a lesson and he talks about how most people are playing one of the most popular games in the world, which is called Follow the Follower, where they're just kind of going along with the herd, doing what everybody else is doing. And I believe it was Mark Twain who said that, anytime you catch yourself on the side of the majority, you better stop to consider whether or not you're making the right decision. And I think that you see a lot of that lately, right? I think you're absolutely right. Now, here's the thing is that, like, if most of our behavior is controlled by our subconscious mind and our subconscious mind is programmed socially and culturally, like, is there really such a thing then as free will? Now, hear me out here. We're getting into some pretty like deep philosophical discussion, and I'm not suggesting we're going to solve this today, because this is a conversation that has been going on for centuries: free will versus determinism. But my wife and I, we were in a conversation the other day. We went for a drive out in the country, and the boys fell asleep in the back, and we started talking about this, and we started talking about like, well, if so much of our behavior is controlled by our do we even like have a choice? Are we even like making our own decisions? Or is so much of that predetermined? Now the question came up where it's like, well, what's the difference between a choice and a decision? What's the difference between a choice and a decision? Or are they the same thing? What do you think, Melissa?
A choice, I think a decision is a choice that has been acted upon.
Oh, I like that. Okay, so a
Right.
decision is a choice that's been acted upon.
You've then made your decision based on choices.
Okay.
Right?
Okay, sure. Yeah. I could get on board with that for sure. Here's the thing that I think that oftentimes those two words are used interchangeably. Okay. But I don't see them being the same thing. like a decision, okay, if you look it up, the definition of decision is to come to some sort of a resolution or to resolve a situation permanently. Okay, you resolve the situation, okay, or you make a decision. Whereas a choice is you're choosing between two or more options. You're choosing between two or more options. Am I doing this or am I doing that? And I think of it sometimes in the sense of like, I'll make dinner for my kids. Okay. And I like to give them the choice, the illusion of choice anyway. Well, I'll say to them, well, are you having fish sticks tonight or are you having hamburgers? Fish sticks or hamburgers? And it's like they think that they get to make the decision, but it's really that decision's already being made for them. So is that a lack of free will? They don't have absolute control over what they do. A lot of their decisions are actually more choices. Now, as people, as human beings, we have a tendency to believe that we make our own decisions, don't we? I think most people would like to think that they're in control of their own life, that they make their own decisions. But I think oftentimes, hey, Brett, if you're going to be goofy, man, I appreciate it. Other people are trying to pay attention here. Pardon me? It's a little bit of a distraction. Okay. Thanks. So, we're talking about, decision versus choice. Okay. And I think oftentimes, we have a limited number of choices because so much of that's predetermined, depending on where you grow up, what kind of influences you had when you were young. It's funny. I just listened to a podcast from somebody. He was a CIA agent. He was a spy who infiltrated terrorist cells. And he was talking about how people are laughably predictable. How people are laughably predictable. And he said, all of us, each of us, are laughably predictable. And they know that if you've been exposed to certain ideas as a young person, if you grew up in a certain area or a certain region, that there are probably certain things that are going to be a lot more open to, a lot more exposed to, and have a lot more experience with. He says that with a little bit of background information on where you grew up and who your family was and your parents were, they can determine fairly accurately what best ways to like develop a relationship with them and then begin to extract information. Marcus Aurelius once said, show me a boy between the ages of 0 and 7, or give me a boy between the ages of 0 and 7, and I'll show you the man. Because that's where our programming takes place. It's funny. I had a client one time, his name was Kunal, okay, at the gym that I owned. His name was Kunal, and him and his family, they were from India. Okay. And Kunal, he told me one time that growing up in India, the expectation was that as you got into the workforce, you were either going to be a doctor, a lawyer, or a failure. A doctor, a lawyer, or a failure. Those were your three choices. If you weren't one or two, you were a failure. And Kunal, he rejected that idea. And Kunal moved to Canada with his family and he opened up a whole bunch of businesses. He bought up franchises and went into business for himself. He actually owned a couple of Dairy Queens. And it was super awkward because he would show up and as a sign of like gratitude, he was so appreciative of me. He'd come with like Dairy Queen and with like blizzards and with like, some of you guys might remember this. And I felt so bad because I'm sitting there eating like a Dairy Queen blizzard while people are working out and I felt terrible, but they were delicious. So, and it would have been rude to say no, wouldn't it? So there I ate this like Dairy Queen blizzard in front of everybody. But that's the kind of thing where it's like those are those expectations. that's where some of our choices are kind of predetermined. And you might want to ask yourself, like, do you really make the big decisions? People think that they make decisions, but you make the ones that are in harmony with your paradigm. You make the decisions that are in harmony with your paradigm. But if you go to start making decisions that are outside of your paradigm, you'll know real fast. And how will you know? You'll know because you'll feel it. It will feel very awkward, very uncomfortable, very scary. Melissa?
Yeah, I don't know the path that everybody is on in this course, but it seems that everybody kind of wants to get away from what we've been programmed to think is supposed to be our path, right? Monday to Friday, 8 to 5, work schedule. And yeah, it's been interesting just to think about being able to like support my family in a different way and going against the grain of what like the government and the schools and our parents have all told us. This is what you do, and then you retire and then you die. And it just, it doesn't sit right with me. I was like, there's got to be a different way. And yeah, so I mean, that's my path. And I feel like everybody's kind of similar thinking here is like, there's got to be a different way. And like the minute you think about doing something differently than what we've been programmed to believe, like it's instant scare or fear, or like, I don't know, like butterflies, and maybe in a good way, maybe in a bad way, but it's always there because until you realize it and you talk about it more, you don't realize like how crazy the programming is that schools and governments like make us believe is the only way. It's crazy. It's crazy.
I don't even call it an education system anymore. I don't think that's what they're doing. They're not educating us. They're indoctrinating us.
Oh yeah.
It's very similar to a form of brainwash.
Contributing members of society to pay taxes, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's true. And you're starting to see a little bit more of a wave of people who are beginning to reject that idea. You're starting to see that in a little bit more in mass. So, I want to say that kind of, gives me hope for the future. But a lot of people are beginning to reject this idea of working 40 hours a week and, working for 65 years so that you can have a couple of years at the end of your life for retirement, or, working 50 weeks out of the year and that sort of thing. They're looking for more, So I think that's a super fascinating question. Like, is there such thing as free will, or are a lot of my decisions made for me? Do I even have the ability to make my own decisions? I think because we have a conscious thinking mind, we can become analytical. We can become critical thinkers. We can ask ourselves questions, and we can act opposed to kind of like mainstream, or like Melissa's saying, like the herd mentality, if we choose to, if we want to. But you might also want to ask yourself, like, what's my process for making decisions? Like, if this is the most powerful, the most important function of the mind, what's my process for doing that? And I'll tell you, you absolutely have a process. Whether you're aware of it or not, or to what extent, might be another story or another question. But you might want to ask yourself, what's my process for coming to a decision? You guys want to know what most people's process is? Most people's process is they do one of two things. Either they defer or delay. Defer or delay. Well, defer to who? Well, a lot of times people have a tendency to defer to, their spouse if they're in a long-term relationship or have a significant other. They'll defer to them. If anybody is in sales, you guys have maybe heard the spouse objection. That's a big one. The spouse said, well, I want to talk to my wife, or I got to talk to my husband before I make this decision. Sometimes people would defer to friends or family. I think it was Wallace D. Wattles in The Science of Getting Rich. He said the biggest reason why most people are broke is because they go to their friends and family for advice about money. And most of the time, my friends and family don't know shit about money either. Sometimes, depending on your friends and depending on your family, they can actually give you advice that's more harmful than it is helpful. I don't know if any of you guys have family members that shit on your dreams, or who have friends that are maybe, undermining some of your ideas. I think it's pretty common, and sometimes, we have an ability, or we have the tendency to allow that to affect our decision making. Napoleon Hill says that the majority of people who fail are generally easily influenced by the opinions of others. You might want to ask yourself, how influenced am I by the opinions of other people? Personally speaking, less so now, but there was a huge part of me that allowed other people to do my thinking for me. Napoleon Hill says, you have a brain, you have a mind, use it. Don't allow other people to do your thinking for you. Don't allow the opinions of other people to affect your decision making. Opinions, he says, that's the most common commodity on the planet. Everybody's got one. They say that about belly buttons too, don't they? Opinions are like belly buttons. Everybody's got them. But don't allow the opinions of other people to make your decisions for you. You've got a mind and you've got a brain. Use it. So most people, they have a tendency to defer or delay. Delay how? Well, oftentimes, it's just not the right time. I need more time to think about it. I want to wait until I have more time, or wait until I have more money, and they end up waiting and waiting and waiting until one of two things happens. Either they wait until now the situation demands that you make a decision, or the opportunity disappears. Now, I get this. Like I said, this is something that I continue to struggle with too. Napoleon Hill says that procrastination is the common enemy that every man and woman must overcome. Procrastination is the most common enemy, and every man or woman must learn to overcome. And like I found, I've shared with you guys that I've been considering doing LASIK eye surgery for quite a while. To be honest with you, though, the thought of having somebody go in and slice of my eye with a laser just like irks me. I can't wrap my head around it. But I've been thinking I should do it for quite a while. You too, yeah. And then last month or whatever it was, I had that incident where I had a cornea ulcer. I had a cut on my eye, and man, it was the most painful thing ever. And I never want to experience that again. Now that's kind of like the nudge that I needed. Now I have a consultation booked with the LASIK department here. It's like most people will defer until the situation demands that they make a decision. Or what happens sometimes is the opportunity disappears and it's no longer on the table. To be honest with you guys, it scares me to think how many opportunities I've squandered or I've wasted because I said no, or because I waited for too long and then it wasn't a viable option anymore. If you guys, some of you guys saw that movie Think and Grow Rich, right? And in that video, there was a line that jumps out at you and it says that to get into the habit of saying yes. Saying yes to what? Well, saying yes to opportunities, saying yes to what you want, saying yes to life, saying yes to your intuition. There's a book by Michael A. Singer called The Untethered Soul. And he wrote The Untethered Soul, but he also wrote another one called The Surrender Experiment. And the Surrender Experiment is a true life account of his experiences. What he did was, for an entire year, while he was getting into the meditation practice, he decided that he was just going to say yes to his intuition. And any idea, any thought, any opportunity, any little synchronicity that arose, he was going to take the opportunity. He was going to say yes. And this story accounts an unbelievable journey from where he started being broke and this little kind of like hippie dude sitting out in the field meditating, to like owning and operating and creating multi-million-dollar businesses and owning all this land, where he now flies in people from around the world to come and have an international meditation center. He didn't know the how, he didn't have the money. He just got into the habit of listening to his intuition and saying yes when the opportunities arose. It's fascinating. I love that book. I love Michael A. Singer, but we're talking about most people's process for decision making is to do one of two things. Either they defer and allow other people to make their decisions for them, or they delay. Okay. And Napoleon Hill here, he wrote an entire chapter on one word: decision. An entire chapter. Okay. And if you guys have read this at all, this might sound familiar, but the very first paragraph in the decision chapter, he says that accurate analysis of 25,000 men and women who experienced failure disclosed the fact that the lack of decision or indecision was near the head of the list of the 30 major causes of failure. This is no mere statement of theory. This is a fact. And he says that procrastination is the opposite of decision and is the common enemy which practically every man and woman must conquer. But he says that failure to make a decision, indecision, and procrastination are the leading causes of failure. The leading causes of failure. Going back to this essay, Deafness of Purpose. Okay, deafness of purpose. Like I said, you guys study this essay for the rest of your life, you guys will be good. But the second paragraph in this essay, he says that deafness of purpose is the starting point of all achievement. Its lack is the stumbling block for 98% of people. He says simply because they never really define their goals or start towards them. They never decide. They never make a decision based on what they want. That's the stumbling block for 98% of people. That's why John C. Maxwell says that 98% of achieving anything is first just knowing what the hell you want. You know? So if indecision is at the top of the list of reasons for failure, what do you think is like the cause of indecision? What's behind that?
Probably fear.
Fear of what?
Fear of rejection or fear of failure, fear of criticism.
Fear of rejection or fear of failure, fear of criticism. Yeah. I think that'd probably be pretty accurate. Yeah. Jamie, did you have something different? Let's go Jamie and then Brett.
Yeah, mine was fear as well.
Fear? Yeah. Brett?
I'd say it'd be criticism. I know that's a lot of people think, oh, I can't do that. What are people going to say?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. That fear of criticism. That's something that I struggled with for a long time. I think probably most people have, you know. But I think you're right. I think that at the root of indecision comes down to fear. You know, what's interesting is that Bob Proctor says that the cause of all fear is ignorance. Not being stupid, not that type of ignorance, just not knowing. And that the opposite of ignorance is what? Knowledge and understanding. Right? You might ask, well, knowledge of what or understanding of what? You know, and if Bob Proctor were sitting here, he'd say that it's knowledge and understanding of the laws, the universe, the laws of the universe, and the laws that govern the universe in which we live, understanding how that works. And I think that the lack of indecision, or the root of indecision, is, like you said, fear. But I think it's a lack of confidence, a lack of faith, a lack of courage, maybe. Like Bob Proctor would say, maybe a lack of understanding, a lack of faith, right? Now, the really interesting thing here is that, you know, if the root of indecision is fear and a lack of confidence and a lack of faith, well, the truth is that if you just start to address the confidence and you just start to develop your faith, would that take care of the indecision? I think so. 100%. Yeah. The truth is that decision making, and to make a decision, it requires confidence, it requires faith, and it requires courage. That's the truth. But what is a decision? Well, a decision is a mental shift. It's a mental shift. A decision requires nothing other than confidence, courage, and faith. Prior to popular belief, a decision does not require time. It does not require knowledge, and it does not require money. Those things will come as the result of decisions that you make. Once you make a decision, you will begin to attract those things. You will begin to attract the knowledge, the awarenesses, the opportunity, the money, the conversations. That comes as a result. But a mental shift in the form of a decision does not require any of those things before you make it. Mental decision is a mental shift, but you can feel it, can't you? You guys think back to a time in your life where you made a decision and that changed the way that you felt about it? It's an emotional thing, isn't it? It's not an intellectual thing. It's an emotional thing. You know, that requires no time or money. Those things come after the fact. Now, the root word for decision is actually to decide, to cut off, right? To cut off, you know, in the sense of the incision, right? From, you were talking a surgical perspective, to cut into. Decision is to cut off, like as in cut off all other options. You know, like burn the boats, like Napoleon Hill's talking about in Think and Grow Rich. There is no way back. There is no retreat. It's we win or we perish. Now, I'll tell you, very, very few people actually make real decisions in the truest sense of the word. Very few people make a real decision in the true sense of the word. Most people, what are they in the habit of doing? Most people are in the habit of leaving the door open just a crack, just a touch, to go back on their decisions. I'm not going to drink this weekend. I'm going to have a sober weekend. And then it's like you get a phone call or a text from a friend, and it's like, hey, just come out for one. Come on. Johnny from high school is out. Everybody's having a good, all right, okay, let's go. You know, or and I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to get in shape. And it's like, oh, well, okay. But I just saw the newest episode of the newest season of Yellowstone came out. Why don't I just, you know, pull up a chair and let's check this out. Have you seen Yellowstone yet? Oh, that sounds good. I heard good things. You know, or I'm gonna get in shape, I'm gonna lose weight, and it's like, oh well, but the boys and I were going on a road trip. It's going on a road trip, pizza and beer. It's like, well, what the hell does that have to do with anything? Did you make a decision or not? You know, most people leave the door open just a little bit to go back on their decisions. That's not a real decision, then, is it? Dr. Benjamin Hardy is a psychologist that I really admire. And he's got a video, a TED Talk called 100% is easier than 98%. 100% is easier than 98%. Because if you make up your mind and you decide a decision is a one-time event, you decide and you commit to that. If you're 98% decided, well, there's still that little bit of wiggle room. It's like going back and forth and you waffle and that kind of thing. James Allen has an essay that called Decision and Steadfastness. And he says that the waffler is the weakling. The waffler is the weakling. And like I said with Dr. Benjamin Hardy, that 100% committed is actually way easier because then you made up your mind and it's a done deal. Guess what? You never have to think about it again. It's already done. It's already decided. It's not up for debate. You know, the truth is that indecision is actually a huge reason for stress, or a huge cause of stress. A tremendous amount of stress comes from indecision, like sitting on the fence. I'll tell you, indecision is a disintegrating energy. It's a low vibration energy. And if you're feeling like you're in a low vibration state, look around and I bet you that there's probably an area, or maybe multiple, where you have yet to make a decision. And I can almost guarantee that if you make a decision on that, it'll shift your energy and shift your vibration, and it'll change the way that you feel like that. That's how it works. This is, you know, the truth is that making decisions is actually like a super, not necessarily time consuming, but it requires a ton of energy, mental and emotional energy. You guys know what I mean? Would you guys agree? Making decisions requires a lot of energy. Yeah, totally. And it can be a huge drain of our energy. Now, hear me out here. We have an infinite number of things that we could decide, or decisions that we can make choices on all day long, every day, don't we? Do we have an infinite number of time or energy? No, of course not. We've got a finite amount of time, energy, and attention. This is one of the big reasons why so many high achievers are big fans of like wearing the same outfit every day or eating the same thing, because decision fatigue is a real thing. By the end of the day, if you've made a million different decisions, you're going to be exhausted. So some of the world's most successful like high achievers, people like Mark Zuckerberg, Steve Jobs, Barack Obama, okay, believe it or not, Giorgio Armani, okay, Simon Cowell, who else? Steve Jobs, Tony Robbins. You know, a lot of these people, they're in the habit of wearing the same thing every day and eating the same thing every day. And you think, well, wouldn't that get a little bit boring? I don't know, maybe. But when they asked about it, they said, well, I don't have the time or the energy to make decisions and waste my time and energy making decisions about trivial things like what I'm going to eat or what I'm going to wear. I make that decision one time and it saves me so much time and energy. You know, it's about creating systems that support your success. In Atomic Habits, James Clear says that most people don't rise to the level of their goals. Most people sink to the level of their systems. And systems might be another term for habits or routine. Okay. Most people don't rise to meet their goals. They sink to the level of their systems. And if you don't have systems and routines that support your success, I'm sorry to tell you, but it's just not going to happen. You got to create those systems that support your success, those habits, those routines. Like, when we're talking about decision, right? I mean, my kid makes fun of me all the time. My son, Ren, he said, "Let me guess, Dad, you're having eggs for breakfast." And it's like, yeah, I am. Why? How do you know that? Well, because I've had eggs for breakfast every day for the last 15 years. Same with a lot of things, though. We do our meal prep, the same few things, the same time on the same days. It's like it just saves you that mental and emotional energy, not having to think about what it is that we're going to do. It's a system that's set up and in place, and it runs automatically. But a lot of the high achievers are in the habit of making committed decisions. It's funny. I got him. I think I told this to you guys before, but Ezra, my son, he's 7 now. He said to me the other day, he said, "Hey, Dad, what's a committed decision?" And I thought, well, that's a funny question for a 7-year-old. Where'd you hear that? And I guess what happens is he's got this little iPhone watch. It's like a pretend or a mock iPhone or an iWatch kind of thing. And it's got a camera on it and a microphone and little games and things. But he slid it under my door and he's recording some of my conversations. So I gotta be careful. I got a little spy ops in my own house here. But he said, "What's a committed decision?" And I shared with him something that Ken Blanchard has shared with me. And maybe some of you guys are familiar with Ken. But Ken asks a very powerful question. And Ken asks, are you interested in achieving your goals, or are you committed to achieving your goals? Are you interested in achieving your goals, or are you committed to achieving your goals? And honestly, I thought that was the same thing. Well, let me ask you guys, what's the difference? Is there a difference? Melissa says, "Oh yeah." What's the difference, Melissa?
I mean, we could all be interested in 1,000 things, million things, right? There's lots of things I'm interested in. But I think in order to achieve some of those interests,
Yes.
there are steps from A to B that have to be taken in order to achieve, I would say, your interests. In order to achieve your interests, not necessarily your goals, but to achieve your interests, there is a process in between those two things.
Right. A process.
Yeah.
It's like, are you committed to the process?
Are you committed to the process? And I think that goes for any area of your life or any type of business or really anything that can apply to.
100%. I would agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ken Blanchard, he asked the question, are you interested in achieving your goals, or are you committed? And he says that when you're interested in achieving your goals, you'll do it only when it's convenient, only when it's easy. But when you're committed to achieving your goal, you'll do it no matter what. You'll do it regardless. And he says you'll accept no excuses, only results. You'll accept no excuses, only results. You might want to ask yourself that question, and be honest with yourself. Like, am I interested in doing that, or am I fully committed? Am I doing it regardless of how I feel in the moment? Am I going all in on it? Am I going all in? And be honest with yourself. If you're just interested, that's okay. It's not for anybody else to judge, but it's helpful to know, isn't it? I've shared with you guys that I gave up alcohol. And part of that process was I did a 12-step program. And it was hugely beneficial for me. And I learned a lot. I learned a lot about myself. But one of the things that really jumped out at me from that was this notion that there's a phrase that really stuck with me. And it says that half measures avail us nothing. Half measures avail us nothing. And if you're going to be successful, you got to go in with both feet. You got to be committed. Now, I don't really like to like name drop you guys. Like that's not really like my character. Okay, I'm not trying to like impress anybody here, but I've got some friends who are, well, like kind of high profile, and I know some pretty like cool people. Okay, and like some famous people, and one of them, I got this buddy Matthew McConaughey. I don't know if you guys know Matthew McConaughey. Well, I called him up the other day and I said, hey, Matt, and we call each other Matt. We're on like a first name basis like that. But I said, hey, Matt, I got this group of people that I'm working with. And I said, we're talking about success and we're talking about goals and we're talking about what it requires to achieve them. And I said, it might be really cool if you do you have like any words of wisdom or any like encouragement that you want to share? And so he recorded this little like video for me. He sent it to me to show it with you guys. Do you guys want to see it? Anybody want to see this like video that Matthew McConaughey sent? Well, if you don't want to, you don't have to.
Matt, show us the video.
Okay, all right, that's what I was waiting for. Okay, sweet. Check this out. Yeah, this is legit, guys. Can you guys see this okay? Okay, this is my buddy Matt. Okay, with a personalized message for you.
Don't half-ass it. Don't half-ass it. Boy, that never goes out of style, does it? I mean, think about it. If you're gonna do something, if you've chosen to do something, whatever it is, easy, hard, if you give it your all and you don't half-ass it, win, lose, draw, get what you want, don't get what you want, whatever the outcome is, if you don't half-ass it, at least you're not gonna have to wonder, oh, would the outcome have been different? What if I did give it my all? And boy, wondering that is what keeps us up at night.
Oh, Jim Rohn, love Jim Rohn too. Don't half-ass it. Like I said, half measures avail us nothing. And you got to ask yourself, like, am I willing to go all in? Jump in with both feet. Napoleon Hill, he says that analysis of, well, here, I'll give you this is a whole paragraph in there. You guys can read it if you want in the decision chapter. But Napoleon Hill says that the most successful people are in the habit of making decisions quickly and firmly and changing their mind slowly, if ever at all. The most successful people are in the habit of making decisions quickly and firmly and changing their minds slowly, if ever at all. Now, to be honest with you, this has been contrary to a large extent to which I live my life. And I like to kind of hum and haw and weigh my options and take my time and things like that. And did that work for me? Well, maybe in some cases. Did that hurt me? I think definitely, in some cases too. But here's the thing. I thought this was fascinating. I did not know this before, but in researching for this call today, I was doing some research and reading, and I learned something that I didn't know before. It's amazing what you can do, what reading will do for you, hey? But I learned that when Andrew Carnegie proposed the idea to Napoleon Hill to write Think and Grow Rich, he had invited him over to his house. And for 3 days, they went back and forth and they're talking about this idea and sharing kind of who some of the people were that he could study and what some of those topics and themes could include. And then when the time came for Andrew Carnegie to ask Napoleon Hill, he said, so now that I've given you all of the information, do you want to commit to writing Think and Grow Rich? And I guess Napoleon Hill kind of sat back in his chair and he thought about it for a second. And Napoleon Hill did not realize this at the time, but Andrew Carnegie had a stopwatch in his hand, and under the table, he was timing him. And he had told himself that if Napoleon Hill does not give him a firm response within 60 seconds or less, the offer is revoked. So Napoleon Hill sat back in his chair and he thought about it. And apparently it took him about 30, 35, 40 seconds before he said firmly, yes, I'll do it. And Andrew Carnegie said that he could hear in his voice that it was a committed decision. Later, Napoleon Hill writes about it. He said, I didn't realize that at the time, but 20 seconds stood between me and my destiny. 20 seconds between a life and a legacy of infamousy. Is that a word? And being nobody who disappears into the history books. 20 seconds. So my question for you guys is, how do you know if you're making the right decision? How do you know? Like, let's say you have all of the information. It's not an idea, a story of having information. Let's say you have the time, you have the money. How do you know if it's the right decision or not?
It feels wrong. Like it feels scary, or I don't know, it feels something not aligned with your paradigm and your safety net.
Okay, yeah. So you're saying that if it's something that excites you and also scares you and it's making you feel outside of your comfort zone, then you should probably say yes to it. Right. Yeah, I'd agree with that. Melissa, how about you?
I don't think you know.
Mm,
I don't think you know until it's done.
mm.
And like that video with your friend Matt there.
Yeah, yeah.
It's one of those things where you'll know, and at least if it wasn't the right decision and it didn't work out, then at least you know, and at least you're not gonna, like you said, lay awake at night wondering about all the what ifs. But I don't think you'll
Right.
ever know. I think you just
Right.
have to like do it because it's something that you want to experience. What that
Right.
outcome will be. But yeah.
I would agree. You know, I agree with what Tamara said. Absolutely,
Yeah.
100%. But
Yeah.
even then, like, how do you know if you're making the right decision, have the right choice? You don't. You don't know until after you've done it. You don't know until you make the decision and you start to make progress on it. You can't ever know. You know, you'll never know if it was the right decision or not. You know, I shared a quote a couple of weeks ago. I said, sometimes you make the right decision and sometimes you make the decision right. And to me, what that means is like, hey, you just got to decide with whatever you got and wherever you're at right now, start making forward progress, because sometimes even a wrong decision leads you in the right direction to the right decision, doesn't it? Just takes a little bit longer to get there. So what do? Well, then we just got to relax. There is no wrong decision. Just relax. Take the pressure off. Focus on what you want and begin to only see things the way that you want them to be. Relax. That's where that understanding comes in. That's where that knowledge comes in. That's where that faith comes in. There's a line that I thought was really powerful in here. We're going to get into this a little bit more next week, but he says that decisions made in a spirit of faith, and only by such decisions can men and women solve their problems and win for themselves estates of material and spiritual wealth. Let us never forget that. Decisions require confidence, courage, and faith. Faith in what? Well, faith in the universe and the way that things have a tendency to unfold, and faith in yourself. So relax. Take the pressure off yourself. You know, growing up, I thought that I spent a large portion of my adult life afraid to make a decision. afraid to figure out what it is that I wanted to do. I thought I could be anything. I thought I could be a police officer. There was a time where I wanted to own a store, like a ice cream shop at the lake. I thought would be super cool, and doing some cool things like that. I thought I could do a lot of things. I wanted to be a lawyer, and because I was too afraid to make a decision about what it was that I wanted, I didn't make any decision because I was afraid of failure. I thought, what if I get halfway down that road and I decide I don't want to do that anymore? I thought, well, that would be failure. So what I did is I didn't do anything. I fucked away my 20s, and I realized much later that I failed by default because I was in the same damn spot I was 10 years ago, but now I was 10 years older and nothing to show for it. So I had to scramble real quick to try to get my poop in a group, So relax. Take the pressure off, have faith, and make a decision based on what you want. I'm going to leave you with one last line here. This is from Think and Grow Rich. It says that those who reach decisions promptly and definitely know what they want, and they generally get it. He says the leaders in every walk of life decide quickly and firmly he says they decide quickly and firmly. That is the major reason why they are leaders, which makes a lot of sense in my mind. Okay. He says the world, now this is the part I want you to pay attention to. I love this part. The world has the habit of making room for the man and woman whose words and actions show that he or she knows where they are going. The world has a way of making room for the people who know what they want, who see where they're going, and allow their thoughts, their words, and their actions to support that. But first, you got to know what the hell you want. Decision. Simple word. Everybody knows it. How many people are doing it? Anyway, any last questions or comments here before I let you guys run and enjoy your long weekend? Melissa.
I probably speak for the group when I say, you know what, you probably went through all of those non-decision making processes, because I'm really glad you didn't become a lawyer, because this is where you're supposed to be.
Ah,
Right?
you.
This is what you do best. So I think it's great that you went through a little bit of non-decision making, because now you're exactly where you're supposed to be.
Well, I appreciate that. That's
Yeah.
super kind of you, but I'm really happy with how it turned out too.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Sometimes I think back to like what I might be doing if I was a lawyer right now. I'm pouring over piles of paperwork and briefs stacked up to the ceiling.
And you wouldn't have all that hair either.
That's right.
Yeah.
Probably be a little bit more gray.
Yeah.
Okay, you guys. Well, hey, I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of the day. Enjoy your long weekend. I'll chat with you guys soon. Take care.